In this movie, we'll be working on the file cousins.psd. Go ahead and open up that file. And then let's go ahead and double click the hand tool, which will make this image fit in our view here. Double clicking the zoom tool, you know what that one does, right? It takes the image to 100%. Hand tool takes it to fit in view. Alright, and spacebar to reposition the image in the top part of the screen. One more quick look at photo filters with people. Here we have a photograph of my daughter Annika with her two cousins, Evie and Emmy. And what I want to do is apply a warming filter to this image. So I'm going to click on my adjustment layer icon, choose photo filter, and dial in the density or the amount of the warming that I want. Also the warming filter that I'm interested in using. You'll notice that there are a bunch of different filters that you can use here. So I'm going to choose this one, and I'm going to crank this up quite a bit, click OK, and then zoom in on the image, Command plus, so I can really see what I have to work with. Now, one of the things I'm noticing is that I'm getting this color shift. The image looks a little bit peachy, so a couple of things that I could do here. I could either go back to the photo filter and dial in the correct amount of warming that I'm interested in, or I could try a blend mode. And what I'm going to do here is apply a blend mode. And one of the things you're going to see is the image is just going to kind of come to life. So let's zoom out for a second and look at our before and after. You see that it adds this really neat, rich, deep tone to the image. And let's zoom in on it a little bit so you can actually take a look at what's happening here. You can see the warmth showing up all across the image. Of course, if it's too intense for you, you can back it off by lowering the opacity. Now, sometimes what will happen when you do a technique like this is that it will add a little bit too much red in the image. You can kind of see there's a little bit of red here. In this case, it's not so bad, but in some images, there will be a little bit too much red. So what you'll need to do is go to your hue saturation adjustment layer, go to the reds, and then tweak the hue just so you can see what you're working on. In this case, I'm working on a lot of the color in the image, so I want to be careful with it, and then simply pull out some of those. So I'm lowering the saturation of those. Let's look at our preview before and after. You can see it's just taking the reds off just a little bit. Now I'm going to zoom out, look at my before and after, so it's just bringing those reds down just a bit. Like I said, in this particular image, you know what, I like the red, so I'm going to leave that adjustment layer off. Yet there are times when you're working with people where you'll see that there's too much red in the image when you use this technique. In this movie, we'll be looking at how we can add a sepia tone to our images. This is one of my favorite techniques because I think we can use this toning technique to add a lot of depth to our work. Go ahead and open up the file corwig_bailey.psd, this cute photograph of Bailey, and press F to go to full screen view mode, spacebar to position the image near the top part of the screen. Now the first thing that we want to do is add some toning to this particular image. Now there are a number of different ways we can accomplish this, so let's go ahead and go over to our adjustment layer icon and open up a curves adjustment layer. What I'm going to do here is go down to my green channel and I'm going to add some magenta. Now your first thought is, Orwig, you're going this magenta purple direction. I know I'm going that way, but don't worry, it's all part of the mix. Then I'm going to go to my blue channel. Now that's where I'm going to really bring things together and the color is going to become really interesting. Of course I could go back to my red channel if I wanted to bring in a little bit of red to this image. In my case, I think it's pretty good there. I might actually bring in a little bit of cyan. Let's look at our before and after. Click OK. Now that is some really beautiful toning on this particular image. Now there are a couple of different options that we have here. One of the things you're noticing is that the white in the dress is now shifting to a different color, which may not be a bad thing, but let's say what we want to do is have a little bit more of a subtle toning effect. This is really cool. Check this out. What I'm going to do is turn off this eye icon, navigate up to my info palette, select the eyedropper by pressing the I key, and set a point on my image. Here we can see that that gray is 189, 189, 189, which means it's a neutral color. When I click on this eye icon, I can see that there's a color shift, and that's the toning that I added to the image. Now, how can I modify that in another way and then look at those numbers to kind of help me understand what's happening? Well, one of the things that you can do is you can load a specific channel, and you can load a channel with a shortcut. The way that you do that on a Mac is Command-Option-Shift-1. That's going to be loading the red channel or channel 1. On a PC, that's Control-Alt-Shift-1. And you can load your different channels by pressing that shortcut key 1, 2, or 3. So on a Mac, Command-Option-Shift 1, 2, or 3. On a PC, Control-Alt-Shift 1, 2, or 3. So I've now loaded that particular channel. Next, I can fill that channel as it appears in my channels palette by pressing the shortcut to fill my mask with black. The way that I'm going to do that is by pressing Command Delete. Now if you don't know the shortcut, it's a really valuable one. What you can do is fill with your foreground or background color by pressing Command plus the Delete key. On a PC, that's Control plus the Delete key. Some of you are thinking, whoa, where's this guy going? I don't even know what's happening. Well, just hang with me, and then if you need to, watch this movie again, because I think you'll get a lot out of this one. Alright, Command Delete. Now, I want to look at this mask and see what it actually looks like, so I'm going to Option or Alt click it. There you can see that I have an inverted version of Channel 1. Option Alt click that. Now Shift click it to turn it on and off. Now there's where the magic actually happens. Let's look at my numbers. Okay, with the mask on, you can see that my numbers are much closer. So the white in the dress is actually masked out. There isn't a lot of color shift in the brighter tones. Let's look at that again. Shift click before and after. You can see that the majority of the color shift, if we turn this eye icon off, happening in the background, on the rock, around here, and it gives it this really nice subtle color to the overall image. Now, some of you may be thinking, you know, I really would like a little bit more color in the image. What we can do is press Command J, and you'll notice that that doubled the intensity of the color shift. Let's put these layers in a group. Shift click the two layers, press Command G, and then turn on your eye icon before and after. Just as a way of illustration, if we disable these masks to see what we would have had we not created that mask, we have a pretty interesting image, yet it looks a little bit muddy, doesn't it? It looks like the color is just kind of placed on top of the image rather than integrated into the image. And of course, we can continue to create adjustment layers to add more color as we see needed, or double click our icon for our masks, and we could go into these different channels and we can add more color and tone based on our preference. So I'm going to go ahead and modify this just a little bit here. Click OK. One of the things that's always interesting to do when you're working with color and tone is to try on some blend modes for size. So let's just try on soft light, see what happens. One of the things we're seeing there is that we get this nice contrast effect, and then the color is mapped into the darker tones even more fervently. But I'm going to go ahead and take that back to normal because I think it looks pretty good on normal. Again, here's my before and after. I really like the direction this particular image is going in. I'm just going to make some final adjustments here just to dial this in so I get it exactly where I want it. Now I gotta say real quick that if we turn off our adjustment layers that we've created so far, we can obviously go to the adjustment layer icon and choose photo filter. From the drop down menu, choose sepia and then dial in the intensity. Yet, one of the things that I've found is that this sepia toning just doesn't work as good as the technique that we're doing. So I think we're going to have better results with the stuff we're doing, and we are definitely going above and beyond here. So I know that exists, yet I think what we're doing is going to give us even better results. Alright, so far I have this really nice color, and the image looks pretty good. Of course, what I can do with this group is dial in the intensity of this. I can pull this back to a specific level depending on my own preference. My preference is to keep it cranked up. I like what we've done so far, so I'm going to keep that there. Next thing I'm going to do is create a new adjustment layer and select color balance, and I'm going to add some reds, some magenta, and some yellows. I'm looking to add really intense color here. Click OK. Now, of course, what I can do at this stage is dial in the intensity of this. I can pull back the opacity. I can have that final color push there, which is kind of fun. I can also use the technique that we learned in our previous movie, Command Option Shift 1 or Control Alt Shift 1, and then Command Delete in my case to fill with black, Command D for deselect, and now we can see that what we've done is we've mapped that color to specific tones in our image, in this case the darker tones in this particular image. Now if you happen to fill with the wrong color, you can always press Command I. That will invert your mask, so now you can see here that it's the brighter tones that are being affected. That doesn't look very good, so I'm going to take that back to the darker tone. In this particular color adjustment, I like that I'm getting that final deep red in there, yet I don't like the way it's been mapped in. So I'm going to go ahead and shift click to disable that mask, and I want to have this big huge color shift on the image. I want to take this image to a really interesting place, and I'm just going to dial in the amount that I'm interested in having here. I'm going to then create a new layer, and I'm going to create a new layer with a shortcut. The shortcut is Shift Command N or Shift Control N, and I'm going to call this one Corners. I'm going to take the blend mode to Soft Light, and click OK. Next, I'm going to fill this with black with my shortcut. In this case, my foreground color is black, so that will be Option Delete or Alt Delete. So now it's filled with black. It's burning in everything. Grab my brush tool, and in my color picker, I want to choose middle gray. So hue 0, saturation 0, brightness 50%. A blend mode of soft light is absolutely nothing, which is what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and click around a little bit here. And if I take this back to a normal blend mode, check out what we have. We just have some black around the corners, but I did it this way so that I could kind of have a uniform look on those corners there. And I'm going to take this back to a blend mode of soft light. Here's our before and after. We're simply burning down the corners so that the focus stays in on the image itself. Here's our before and after. And I'm going to tweak my color here just a little bit. Pull that back up just a tad bit. You know, this is really where the artistry in Photoshop begins. You could do this almost endlessly. My hope is to provide some training for you that isn't exhaustive, rather that's informative. So I hope you're getting some direction out of this. Alright, the last thing that I'm going to do on this particular image is go to my adjustment layer icon, select curves, and I'm going to bring some contrast in this image. I really just, this vision for this illuminated, contrasty, full of color image. There's my final adjustment. Let's go ahead and go down to layer 1, Option Alt click the eye icon. Here's our before and here's after. Press the tab key, F to go to full screen view mode so we can look at this image and see if we've taken it a good direction. In this movie, we'll be working on the file coda.psd. Go open that one up. To go to full screen view mode, spacebar to position the image near the top part of the screen. Here we have a couple of photographs of the building where I work. This is a hallway outside of the classroom where I teach, and this is a photograph of a hallway that leads to a gallery. What I wanted to do here was somehow combine these two images, and one of the things that you can do is use color to combine content. In this case, the images are pretty different, yet I was fascinated with this whole deal with line and shape and form and the way that this building has been put together, yet the images aren't very connected. So in our last movie, what we did is we warmed an image with some sepia toning. What I want to do in this movie is connect these two images with some cooling by adding some blue tones to the images. One of the things I hope you'll see is by adding this color tone, it's actually going to increase the overall impact of the image. What we're going to do is go to our adjustment layer icon, choose color balance because that's a pretty easy way to go, and increase the cyan and then increase the blues. We're going to crank these up. We're working on the midtones here. And click OK. Now in my mind, this is pretty good to go. Beforehand, I didn't have much to work with, but by combining these two images, putting them side by side, so I'm kind of getting this deal with the line, shape, and form, and then also ideally by setting this line right here on the corner, so there's a little bit of a leading on that image. There's definitely some leading going on this side. I kind of have this line, shape, and form thing going, as well as having this color that connects the images. So one of the things I encourage you to do as you begin to work on images, and possibly as you begin to try to connect something, look to using color in somewhat extreme ways as I've done here. Typically, I'm not comfortable with adding this much of a color shift because it becomes really dominant. And I don't want the viewer to think, okay, gosh, Photoshop added some blue. I want them to think about the content of the image. Yet there are times when color can actually help bring out the content of the image.